The cold, rusty key in my hand was my son Mark's final verdict. It felt like a gravestone, sealing away 50 years of my life. But even then, a tiny defiant pulse beat in my palm, a whisper of something they couldn't see. Mark's voice, flat and without a flicker of feeling, echoed in my ears. "It's all that's left of Dad for you, Mom. An old, cluttered garage." He didn't even look at me, his eyes instead fixed on the run-down metal door, a cruel impatience tightening his jaw. I stood there, outside this forgotten place, a space my husband Robert used to call his sanctuary. Now it was presented to me as my exile, an abandoned storage locker, a place for discarded things, a final resting spot for a lifetime of dedication. They had brought me here, my son Mark and his wife, my daughter-in-law Sarah. They'd escorted me, almost ceremoniously, as if I were an old piece of furniture, to be quietly taken away and left on the curb. There was no real conversation on the drive over, no gentle request, just an order thinly disguised as a suggestion about what was best. The beautiful apartment in Seattle, the home where I'd raised my son, where I'd loved my husband for 50 wonderful years, it was no longer mine. The penthouse, with its sweeping views of the city I adored, now belonged to their new life, and for me, only the smell of dust hung in the air, and the silent, rusty padlock waiting for its key. I took the key from Mark, without a word, feeling its cold, rough edges dig into my skin. The weight of their silent scorn pressed down on my 72-year-old shoulders. It felt like a physical burden. They wanted me to feel small, useless, completely superfluous, a burden they were finally, gracefully shedding. They truly believed they were handing me the scraps, the refuse of a life that was now over. Oh, if only they knew. If only they could have seen that this simple, rusty key, this forgotten place, held a secret that would eventually change everything. For so long, I was Eleanor, Robert's wife. The love of my life, he always said. We lived in that gorgeous penthouse, overlooking all of Seattle. My passion was gardening. My orchids were famous among our friends. Robert was a mechanical engineer, retired and quiet, but so very caring. He loved his garage, spent hours there. He called it his organized mess, and I rarely visited. I was happy taking care of our home, of him. I remember Robert always tinkering with his projects in that garage. He would say he was preparing for the future, and I'd just smile thinking he meant some grandchildren's toys that never quite came along. He kept papers, tools, parts, all with this incredible meticulousness. "Eleanor, everything here has a purpose. One day you'll understand," he told me once, a mysterious twinkle in his eyes. I just nodded, never really paying much attention. My focus was always on him, on us, on our home. Then Robert passed 6 months ago. The apartment, once full of life, became silent and impossibly large. Mark, my only son, and Sarah, his wife, moved in. They said they were there to take care of me, but their presence filled the house with an even greater emptiness. I started to feel like a visitor, someone who was just in the way, a ghost in my own home, preventing a young couple from living their own lives. without the shadow of an elderly mother nearby. Things began to change subtly. First, it was Sarah's little digs, comments about how the apartment was simply too big for me, how much space it was. Then, Mark started avoiding my calls, always busy with work. Our family meals, once a cherished tradition, became rare. And when we did sit down to eat, the silence was broken only by their conversations about investments, about trips I clearly wasn't a part of. I felt the estrangement like a constant, chilling draft. I tried to talk to Mark, to ask if something was wrong, if I had done something, but he always dodged the subject. "You're imagining things, Mom. Everything's fine." But his eyes never confirmed his words. They passed over me as if I were just an object, an old piece of furniture they hadn't quite figured out how to get rid of yet. A deep pain settled in my chest, a silent ache. The pain of someone feeling completely superfluous in her own life. I, who had dedicated every single day to building that home, now walked through it on tiptoes. The unspoken promise that they would care for me after Robert's passing had shattered into 1,000 pieces. I clung to my husband's memory, trying to find the strength, trying to understand what was happening to my life. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I just took that cold, rusty key from Mark's hand and gripped it tightly. My fingers traced the irregular metal. For a fleeting instant, I felt Robert's presence there with me. I remembered his strong hands holding this very key, his gentle smile as he told me that, in this place, he kept the family's security plan. In that moment, a quiet, unexpected calm settled over me. I watched my son get back into the car, a flicker of relief on his face. He thought I hadn't made a scene, that my silence was defeat, submission. But it was the exact opposite. It was the dignity of someone who knew, deep down, that she had something others ignored. I didn't know exactly what Robert had planned, what secret he had tucked away in that dusty garage, but I trusted him. I trusted that my husband would never, ever leave me helpless, not even after he was gone. My heart was broken, yes, but my mind was clear. This wasn't a moment for fury, for yelling. It was a moment for clarity. They had underestimated me. They saw only a frail old woman, and I let them believe it. I stored away my pain and disappointment, focusing only on the last true link I had with the man who loved me, that garage and the secret it held. They saw only an old woman, discarded, with nothing left. But even as the cold metal pressed into my palm, a different feeling stirred inside me, a quiet, stubborn certainty. They might have thought they were writing the end of my story, but somehow I knew, deep down, this was just the beginning of something entirely new for me. The cold, rusty key still felt heavy in my palm. My son and his wife had driven away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, a widow of 72, with a dilapidated garage as my supposed inheritance. They thought I was broken. They thought I was defeated. But standing there, clutching that key, a different kind of strength began to stir within me. A quiet, stubborn certainty. They might have thought they were writing the end of my story, but somehow I knew, deep down, this was just the beginning of something entirely new for me. It was in that moment, as the Seattle breeze whispered around me, that I started to truly understand who I was and who I had always been. My name is Eleanor. I'm 72 years old, and for 50 of those years, I was Robert's wife. He was the love of my life. Truly, everything I did, every day, revolved around him, around us. We had this beautiful penthouse apartment in Seattle, a place with a view that felt like it embraced the entire city, a constant panorama of life below. My role in our shared world was a homemaker, a quiet life, yes, filled with routines and comforts. But my true passion, my secret joy, was gardening. My orchids, oh, they were quite famous among our friends. People would always ask about them, about my green thumb, the way I could make anything bloom. It was my artistic outlet, my way of bringing beauty into our home. Robert, my wonderful husband, was a retired mechanical engineer. He was a quiet man, thoughtful and steady, but immensely caring in his own way. He spent so many hours in his garage, that place he affectionately called his organized mess. I rarely visited, you know. It was his sanctuary, his space where I trusted him to be happy. I was happy taking care of our home, of him, of our shared life. That was my world, my joy. I remember Robert always tinkering there, always with his projects. The hum of tools, the smell of grease and metal, those were the background noises of his contentment. He'd say he was preparing for the future, and I'd just smile, a little secret smile, thinking about some little grandchildren's toys that never quite came along for us. We had just Mark, our only son, and no grandkids yet. He kept so many papers, tools, parts, all with this incredible meticulousness that, frankly, I found a bit exaggerated at the time. Piles of blueprints, boxes of gears, shelves filled with, well, I never really knew what. Eleanor, he told me once, his voice soft but firm. Everything here has a purpose. Every single piece. One day, you'll understand. His eyes would have this mysterious sparkle, almost a secret he was keeping just for himself. I never really paid much attention, truly. My focus was always on him, on us, on our home. That was where my heart was. Then Robert passed away, 6 months ago. It felt like the air went out of everything, leaving only a vast, echoing silence. The apartment, once so vibrant with our shared life, became silent, too large somehow. Every room felt empty, every corner a reminder of what was lost. That's when Mark, my only son, and Sarah, his wife, moved in. They said they were coming to take care of me, and I wanted to believe them. I really did, but their presence, instead of filling the void, seemed to fill the house with an even greater emptiness. It was like I was watching them live in my home. I started to feel like a visitor, a ghost almost in my own life, like someone who was just getting in the way, a burden perhaps, for a couple who could barely wait to live their own lives, to make the penthouse truly theirs, without the shadow of an elderly mother nearby. It felt like a slow, quiet erosion of everything I knew, everything I thought was certain. I remember walking past Robert's empty chair, feeling his absence more keenly than ever. wishing I could ask him what I was supposed to do now. I missed his quiet wisdom, his reassuring presence. And all this time, all this growing emptiness, I didn't realize that Robert's care for me, his steadfast protection, remained present. It was there, hidden, tucked away behind that forgotten metal door of his garage. The change was slow at first, like the tide receding almost imperceptibly from the shore. I remember the subtle shifts, the little things that began to chip away at my sense of belonging. It started with Sarah. She had a way of making comments, not overtly cruel, but like tiny pinpricks, little digs. She'd talk about how the apartment was simply too big for me now. She'd mention the upkeep, the taxes, the number of empty rooms. It wasn't just the space, you see. It was the implication, the unspoken message that I, Eleanor, a woman who had spent 50 years making that place a home, was now a burden. That the very size of my life, the life Robert and I'd built, were suddenly inconvenient. I'd try to offer solutions, suggest ways to simplify, but her eyes would just glaze over, already dismissive. Then came the calls. My only son, Mark. He started avoiding them. Oh, he'd always have an excuse. Always busy with work, he'd say. A meeting just ran long. He was on another call. At first, I understood. Life gets hectic. But soon, the pattern became clear. My calls would go to voicemail, more often than not. My messages, often left unanswered for hours, sometimes even a full day. I'd call him, my heart tight with a vague unease, just to check in, to hear his voice, but the distance in his tone, when he finally did pick up, was palpable. He was there, but he wasn't there. He was already pulling away, creating a space between us that felt colder by the day. Family meals, once the cornerstone of our week, became rare. A quick dinner here, a hurried lunch there, and when we did sit down, the atmosphere was different. The comfortable silence we once shared was gone. Instead, the air would be thick with their conversations. Mark and Sarah would talk about investments, about new business ventures, about trips they were planning, trips to places I'd always dreamed of seeing with Robert, places they knew I couldn't afford on my own now. I'd sit there, stirring my tea, a quiet observer to a life I clearly wasn't a part of. They wouldn't even bother to include me, not with a glance, not with a question. My presence felt like an interruption to their vibrant, future-focused world. I felt the estrangement like a constant chill, seeping into my bones. It was a coldness that no blanket, no cup of hot tea could ever warm. It was an internal freeze, making me feel brittle and fragile. I tried to talk to Mark, you know? I tried. One evening, after Sarah had gone to bed, I gathered my courage and approached him in the living room. "Is everything all right, dear?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Is something wrong with me?" He looked up from his phone, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes, quickly masked. "You're imagining things, Mom. Everything's fine." He said the words, but his eyes didn't confirm them. They darted away from mine, never quite meeting them. They passed over me as if I were just an object in the room. A piece of old furniture, perhaps, that they hadn't quite figured out how to discard yet. an heirloom that had lost its value. The pain settled deep in my chest, a silent ache. It wasn't a sharp, sudden pain, but a dull, persistent throb. The pain of someone feeling completely superfluous, unnecessary in her own life. I, Eleanor, who had dedicated every single day to building that home, to nurturing that family, now walked through those familiar rooms on tiptoes. I felt like an intruder, a guest who had overstayed her welcome. The laughter, the shared stories, the quiet companionship that defined my life with Robert, all of it was gone, replaced by a strained politeness, a palpable desire for me to simply disappear. The unspoken promise, the one every mother believes will be kept, that they would care for me after Robert's passing, had shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces. Each shard pricked at my heart. I clung to Robert's memory like a lifeline, recalling his unwavering love, his quiet strength. I tried to find the strength within myself to understand what was happening, to make sense of this sudden, brutal shift in my life. But the truth, I was beginning to realize, was much, much harsher than I could have ever imagined. And it was about to explode, throwing me out of everything I knew, everything I had ever called home. The truth, I was beginning to realize, was much, much harsher than I could have ever imagined, and it was about to explode, throwing me out of everything I knew, everything I had ever called home. The explosion, when it finally came, wasn't loud. It wasn't with shouts or angry words. It was quiet, insidious, and it happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Mark and Sarah drove me, not to a doctor's appointment, not to a friend's house. They drove me to the old garage, the one Robert loved so much. It was a few blocks from our building in Seattle, hidden away on a side street. As we pulled up, my heart sank. The place was exactly as I remembered it from the rare times I'd seen it. Peeling paint clung to the faded wooden siding. Rust bled down the heavy metal door. It looked abandoned, forgotten, like a place where things went to die. And it was there, right in front of that rusty metal door, that the humiliation became official, undeniable. Mark stopped the car. The engine went silent, and the sudden quiet was deafening. He didn't get out. He just reached into his pocket. His hand came out with a key. It was a simple, old-fashioned key, dull metal. He held it out to me, his fingers not quite touching mine. He couldn't meet my eyes. He looked somewhere past my shoulder, out the window, anywhere but at me. "Mom," he started, his voice flat, almost rehearsed, like he'd practiced these words over and over. "We need the apartment." He paused, cleared his throat. "Sarah is thinking of renovating, and well, your room would make a great office for her." My room, the room I had slept in for decades, where I'd dreamed beside Robert, where I'd watched my son grow up. Now it was just a room, an office in waiting. He continued, rushing the words now. "A lawyer said the only thing Dad left solely in your name was this place, this garage. The rest of the assets, they're in probate. And well, it's complicated." He finished with a shrug, a small, dismissive gesture. The lie was so obvious it actually hurt more than the truth could have. He didn't need the apartment. Sarah didn't need an office. They simply didn't want me around anymore. They wanted me out. Sarah remained in the car. She sat in the passenger seat, staring at her phone. Her face was illuminated by the screen's glow, completely absorbed in whatever was happening in her digital world. It was as if she weren't part of this cruel scene unfolding right outside her window. Her indifference cut deeper than any harsh word. Her silence, a complicity, was a fresh wound. I was there, 72 years old, being expelled from my home. The home I had built, the life I had nurtured. And what was I receiving as consolation? A dilapidated, dusty garage. That gesture, the way he held out that key, the rehearsed words, it was all meant to break me, to make me feel worthless, without options, completely dependent. It was designed to tell me I was nothing. The breaking of the most sacred bond, that of a mother with her son, it happened right there, in silence, under the strong, unforgiving afternoon sun. The air was warm, but I felt only cold. My heart ached, a deep, crushing pain that settled in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I couldn't speak. I just looked at his outstretched hand, at the key, then at his face, still avoiding my gaze. I looked at Sarah, lost in her phone. And then I looked at the rusty door of the garage, my new home. They left me alone on the sidewalk, with that cold, heavy key in my hand. They simply drove away, disappearing around the corner, believing they had won. They left me alone on the sidewalk, with that cold, heavy key in my hand. They simply drove away, disappearing around the corner, believing they had won. Their car's tail lights vanished, leaving only the quiet hum of distant traffic and the oppressive silence of my abandonment. I stood there, utterly alone, with the afternoon sun beating down, feeling the rough, cold metal of the key digging into my palm. I didn't scream. The impulse was there, deep in my throat, a primal urge to unleash all the pain, all the betrayal. But no sound came out. I didn't cry either, though my eyes burned with unshed tears. And I certainly didn't beg. Begging would have given them what they wanted, to see me broken, completely defeated. No, I just stood there, gripping that key so tightly my knuckles turned white, feeling the cold, irregular metal of its teeth and shaft. And for a fleeting instant, just for a moment, I felt Robert's presence right there beside me. I remembered his hands, strong, capable hands, always busy. I could almost feel them closing over mine, guiding this very key, and his smile, that gentle, knowing smile, as he'd told me years ago that in this place, this quiet, unassuming garage, he kept the family's security plan. At the time, I just chuckled, thinking it was another one of his eccentricities, perhaps a secret stash of antique tools or car parts. I'd never given it a second thought. But now, in this moment, those words, that memory, brought with them a strange, unexpected calm. A quiet certainty settled over me, a feeling like a gentle hand on my shoulder. I watched Mark's car turn the final corner and disappear from sight. I saw the relief on his face as he got back in, a way he squared his shoulders, glad I hadn't made a scene, hadn't created any drama. He thought my silence was defeat. He thought it was submission. He thought he had won, but it was the exact opposite. It was the quiet, steely dignity of someone who knows, deep down, that she has something others ignore, something they can't even imagine. I didn't know exactly what Robert had planned. Not yet. I didn't know the specifics of his security plan, but I trusted him. I trusted that my husband, the love of my life, would never, ever leave me truly helpless, not even after he was gone. He was too caring for that, too thoughtful. My heart was broken, yes. It felt like a shattered vase, pieced back together with invisible cracks. But my mind, surprisingly, was clear. This wasn't a moment for fury, for anger, for lashing out. This was a moment for clarity, a moment for quiet strength. They had underestimated me so profoundly. They saw in me only a frail old woman, easily discarded, easily manipulated, and I let them believe it. I stored away the sharp edges of my pain, the heavy weight of my disappointment, tucking them away deep inside where they couldn't be seen. For now, my focus narrowed, concentrating only on the last true link I had with the man who had loved me so fiercely. That old garage and the secret I knew, with every fiber of my being, it held. Strategy wasn't to fight them head on. Not yet. My strategy was simpler, more profound. It was to discover the strength Robert had left for me. The truth, whatever it was waiting, and I would find it. The final glimpse of their car, a fleeting glint of metal turning the corner, felt like a final, deliberate cut. And then, just like that, they were gone. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket. Loneliness hit me then, a physical blow right to the chest, knocking the air out of me. The street noise, the distant hum of Seattle traffic, it all seemed to fade away, muffled and unreal. All I could hear, loud and clear, in the sudden quiet, was the echo of my son's cruel words. "It's all that's left of Dad for you, Mom. An old, cluttered garage." Or even harsher, the unspoken implication. "It's what you have." A beggar's portion, a final, dismissive gesture. I looked at the garage again, at its peeling paint and the rust streaking down the metal door. Then I looked at my hands, still trembling slightly, clutching that cold, rusty key. The crushing weight of abandonment pressed down on me, heavy and relentless. For the first time in my 72 years, I truly felt it. I had nowhere to go. My home, my sanctuary, my life was gone, erased. And now this forgotten place was all that remained. The shame, it was immense. It burned in my cheeks, a hot flush of humiliation. How could I call anyone, my sister, my few remaining friends? How could I explain that my own son had left me on a sidewalk, next to a dilapidated garage, with nothing but this key? The words felt too heavy, too shameful to even form in my mind. My legs felt weak, my 72-year-old body suddenly weary beyond measure. I just couldn't stand there anymore. I sank down onto the curb, the rough concrete cool against my skin, utterly exhausted. It wasn't just physical tiredness, though that was certainly there. It was an exhaustion of the spirit, a deep, bone-weary fatigue that settled into every part of me. The sun, which had been so bright and unforgiving moments ago, began its slow descent towards the horizon. Shadows lengthened, turning the street into a dimmer, more desolate place. And with the fading light, the fear began to grow. A cold, creeping dread that snaked its way into my heart. What if Robert was just storing old tools? Just a collection of forgotten wrenches and dusty car parts, as I had always imagined. What if my son was right, and it truly was just a pile of worthless junk? The thought, once dismissed, now gnawed at me from within. A sharp, persistent ache of doubt. Could I have been so wrong, so foolishly optimistic, clinging to a promise that was nothing more than an old man's musings? The image of Sarah, my daughter-in-law, came back to my mind. Her face, illuminated by the cold blue glow of her phone screen, completely indifferent, completely absorbed in her own world. Her complicity in my humiliation, her silent agreement to my banishment, it hurt profoundly. It was a betrayal from someone who had once called me family. The crisis wasn't an external battle. There were no shouts, no arguments left to be had. It was an internal storm, silent and devastating, raging within me. I was completely alone, discarded, not by strangers, but by my own flesh and blood, my own son. Here I was, sitting on the sidewalk of a place that symbolized, at this very moment, my utter failure. My failure as a mother, as a wife, as a woman who believed she had built a secure and loving life. The world I knew, the steady, predictable world I had inhabited for so long, had crumbled in a matter of hours, reduced to dust and a rusty key. The pain, it reached its peak then. A crushing, overwhelming weight that made it hard to breathe, hard to think. Every memory, every disappointment, every lost hope coalesced into this single, unbearable moment. For a long, silent beat, I truly believed I wouldn't even have the strength to stand up. I wouldn't have the will to walk the few steps to that metal door, to put the key into its lock. What was the point? What if there was nothing there? What if this last thread of hope was just another illusion? It was then, in the depths of my despair, when I felt completely hollowed out, that a faint echo stirred. Not Mark's cruel words, but another voice, Robert's. His kind, steady voice, whispering those words he'd said so long ago, with that mysterious sparkle in his eyes. "Eleanor, everything here has a purpose. One day you'll understand. It's the family's security plan." The memory, so distant, so easily forgotten until now, felt like a last thread of hope, fragile but tenacious. A tiny flickering light in the gathering darkness, just enough to pull me back from the edge. That thread of hope, fragile as it was, gave me just enough strength. With my hands still trembling, but with a new, quiet resolve, I pushed myself up from the curb. Each step toward that rusty metal door felt like an age, like walking through thick mud. But I made it. I reached the lock, the cold, irregular key still clutched in my fingers. I took a deep breath, pushing down the last vestiges of doubt, and turned the key. With a loud, protesting creak, the heavy metal door finally opened. A wave of stale, disused air rushed out, carrying the scent of old oil, dust, and something indefinable that was uniquely Robert. My eyes, accustomed to the bright afternoon light, struggled to adjust to the sudden gloom inside. But as they did, as the shadows began to retreat, my heart stopped. Truly, it just clenched in my chest. Beneath several dusty canvas covers, tucked away in the deepest part of the garage, were three unmistakable silhouettes. Long, elegant lines, distinct curves. The vintage cars. The beautiful classic cars Robert loved so much. The ones I had always thought he had sold years ago. His precious collection. They were here, all along. I walked further in, my feet crunching on scattered bits of dried leaves and dust. My eyes, still wide with a mix of shock and wonder, scanned the space. In a small corner, nestled on an old workbench, sat a yellowed envelope. My name was on it, written in Robert's firm, familiar handwriting. My heart, which had just stopped, began to pound now, a furious drum against my ribs. I picked it up, my fingers tracing the letters of my name. With trembling hands, I tore it open. Inside, there was a letter, penned in his meticulous hand, and several official-looking documents. I pulled them out, one by one, my eyes scanning the words. Robert explained everything. He truly did. The garage itself and the small piece of land it stood on, they were mine. Bought years ago, he'd written, put solely in my name. Kept entirely separate from the family estate, from anything Mark could touch. The cars, those beautiful machines under their covers, were indeed a valuable collection. An investment he had carefully tended to, meant specifically to secure my future, to ensure I would always be taken care of. And then there was another document. The deed to a small, charming beach house in Ocean Shores. Paid off, completely ready. A quiet sanctuary he had prepared for our old age together. For our golden years, just the two of us. Every word was a testament to his unending love, his foresight, his quiet, steadfast care. As I stood there, absorbing every single word of love and care from his letter, the full weight of what Mark and Sarah had done crashing down on me, I heard it, the distinct sound of a car, stopping abruptly, right outside the garage. My breath caught in my throat. It was Mark. He had returned. Perhaps a flicker of guilt, a tiny spark of conscience had brought him back. Or maybe, more likely, he had come to ensure I wouldn't try to go back to the apartment, to make sure I was truly, irrevocably gone. He walked into the garage, his footsteps uncertain on the dusty concrete. His face, usually so composed, was distraught, confused. Then his eyes fell on the vast shapes under the canvas covers. He stopped dead, shocked. The cars. He must have recognized the outlines, the sheer size of them. He stared, speechless, his mouth slightly agape. I didn't say a word. There was nothing to say. Without a sound, with only the rustle of paper, I held out Robert's letter and the garage deed to him. My hand was steady now. He took them from me, his fingers brushing mine, and his eyes, wide with confusion, fell to the documents. He read. I watched his face. It went from shock, a wide-eyed astonishment, to disbelief, a slow, dawning horror. And then, finally, to the purest, most agonizing shame I had ever seen. His shoulders slumped. His face crumpled. Justice didn't come with shouts, you see. It came with the crushing silence of the undeniable truth. In that moment, standing there among Robert's treasures, he understood. He hadn't disinherited me. Not at all. He had, in his callous greed, disinherited himself from my love and my respect. And that, I knew, was a far greater loss. In that moment, standing there among Robert's treasures, Mark understood. He hadn't disinherited me, not at all. He had, in his callous greed, disinherited himself from my love and my respect. And that, I knew, was a far greater loss. But I didn't wait for an apology. There was no point. The words wouldn't have meant anything now. The damage was done, the chasm too wide to bridge with empty words. I simply folded Robert's letter with care, its edges softened by age and my husband's touch, and slipped it into my purse. The deeds and other documents followed, tucked safely away. My hands, which had trembled with despair just moments before, were now steady, resolute. My eyes scanned the beautiful cars, each one a testament to Robert's passion and foresight. I chose the keys to one of them, a simpler model, perhaps not the flashiest, but pristine, impeccable. It felt right. I picked them up, the metallic jingle, a small declaration of my new freedom. Mark was still standing there, paralyzed, a ghost among the very treasures he had despised, the ones he thought were worthless junk. His face was a mask of shock and shame, his eyes fixed on the empty space where the documents had been. I didn't say a word, didn't even glance back at him. I just turned and walked out of the garage. That chapter of my life, the one filled with their neglect and my quiet suffering, was closed, finished. There was nothing more to be said, no lingering ties to sever. I drove for hours. The engine purred a soft, reassuring lullaby, and the wind, cool and invigorating, whipped through the open windows, caressing my face. It felt like a cleansing, washing away the dust of betrayal, the lingering sting of their scorn. With every mile, a layer of tension, of anguish, seemed to peel away from my heart. A peace, deep and unexpected, settled over me. A peace I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. It was the peace of someone finally truly free. The house Robert prepared for me, the little beach house in Ocean Shores, was exactly like him. Discreet on the outside, nestled quietly among a cluster of evergreens, almost shy in its modesty. But inside, oh, it was full of warmth and care. Every detail spoke of his thoughtful love. A cozy fireplace, comfortable furniture, and a kitchen that already felt like home. The best part? There was a small garden out back, sheltered from the ocean winds, waiting patiently for my orchids. A new canvas for my passion. A space where I could bring beauty back into my life. That first night, I slept profoundly. No tossing, no turning, no racing thoughts. Just a deep, restorative sleep, free from the crushing weight of anguish and rejection that had burdened me for so long. It was the sleep of a woman reborn. My new routine here is wonderfully simple. I wake with the sun, the sound of the ocean, a gentle rhythm in the background. I tend to my garden, coaxing new life from the soil, feeling the earth beneath my fingers, a grounding, healing touch. In the mornings, I walk along the beach, letting the cool spray kiss my face, watching the waves roll in and out, each one a reminder of life's constant ebb and flow. And in the afternoons, I settle down with the books I never had time for before, losing myself in stories, in knowledge, in quiet contemplation. I made a practical decision too. I sold one of the vintage cars, the one I didn't need, not because I craved luxury, but to ensure a truly peaceful life, completely free from any financial worries. I don't seek opulence or grand gestures. I only seek the quiet, dignified peace that was stolen from me, that I had to fight to reclaim. And in this solitude, in this gentle rhythm, I found within myself a strength I honestly didn't know I possessed, a resilience I had underestimated, a strength nourished not just by my husband's secret, enduring love, but by my own spirit, my own unwavering belief in myself. I didn't need a palace to be happy. I only needed to be the owner of my own path. Today, looking out at the endless, shimmering sea from the porch of my little house, the one that Robert's quiet, enduring love built for me, I finally understand everything, truly everything. My son, Mark, he handed me a cold, rusty key to a garage. He thought it was the end of my story. He thought it was the end of me, a final, dismissive chapter. But my husband, in his silent, steady way, he actually handed me the key to a brand new beginning. He gave me a future I never could have imagined. They, Mark and Sarah, they saw abandonment where there was all along a carefully laid plan of love. They saw nothing but old trash, a pile of junk, where there was, in reality, a treasure of immense care and foresight. This journey, this unexpected turn my life took, it taught me so much. It taught me that our real worth, the deepest sense of who we are, isn't found in what others think of us. It's not in their approval or their recognition, or in what they choose to give us or take away. No, our true worth is in the dignity we carry within ourselves. It's in our spirit, in our resilience, in the quiet strength we find when everything else crumbles. Sometimes, often even, the greatest strength, the most profound power, is revealed in what looks like our greatest weakness. It's in those moments of feeling utterly helpless, completely vulnerable, that you discover just how much you can endure, how much you can overcome. And so, sitting here, with the sound of the waves washing over everything, I can't help but wonder. I ask you, have you ever been treated as if you were invisible? As if your feelings, your life, your very presence didn't matter to the very people who should protect you most? Have you ever felt discarded, tossed aside, only to discover, much later, that your true strength, your real purpose, was stored away in a place you least expected? Maybe it was in a forgotten corner of your own heart, or in a quiet passion you'd set aside, or in the love of someone who saw you, truly saw you, even when others chose not to. I want you to remember this. Even when the world, or the people closest to you, try their hardest to extinguish your light, to diminish who you are, Your story, your life, it still belongs to you. It always will. No one can. And sometimes it's not about fighting to keep open a noisy door of pain and betrayal. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is to simply close that door. Firmly and quietly. Close it. And then turn your gaze. Look for that small, often overlooked window of peace that was there all along, just waiting for you to discover it, waiting for you to open it up and let the fresh air in. It's a strange thing, this life, but I've learned that the greatest inheritance we can ever receive isn't measured in houses or cars or bank accounts. It isn't made of possessions, no matter how grand or valuable. It's made of choices, the choices we make for ourselves. The choice to trust our own intuition, the choice to value our own dignity, the choice to believe in love, even when it seems to have vanished. And most importantly, the choice to chart our own path, even when others try to dictate where we should go. My choices, guided by Robert's wisdom and my own rediscovered strength, led me here, to this quiet haven, to this new, true freedom. Life truly has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? My story, this path I've walked, it's just one example of how life can turn upside down and then, unexpectedly, right itself again. It reminds me, and I hope it reminds you, too, of the quiet, enduring strength that we all carry inside us. Sometimes we don't even know it's there until we absolutely need it. Stories like mine, stories of overcoming what feels like impossible odds, they connect us, don't they? They show us that no matter how difficult the road might seem, no matter how old you are or how much you feel like everything is lost, it truly is never too late to start anew, to find your footing, to build something beautiful again, something just for you. Every single story, every journey through hardship is proof that our dignity, our inherent worth, is our greatest wealth. It's something no one can ever take away, no matter how hard they try. This journey has been a lot. A whirlwind of emotions, of discovery, of letting go. And for you to have listened, to have walked this path with me, even just by hearing my words, it means more than I can say. Thank you. Truly, thank you for listening and for being a part of this journey, for allowing me to share my heart with you. It's important, I think, for stories like mine to be told. Because when we share our truths, we help other people see their own strength. We help them find the courage they might need, the little spark of hope they're looking for in their own lives. So please, always, always believe in your worth. Don't let anyone dim your light or make you feel less than you are. You are enough. You always have been. And on a practical note, one little thing I've learned to pay attention to: if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, stories that might just touch your heart or give you a little lift, well, you know how YouTube can be. Sometimes it feels like they're making changes without us even realizing it. They might be unsubscribing you without warning, moving things around. So take a quick moment, won't you? Just confirm you're still subscribed to the channel. And while you're there, hit that little bell icon too. That way you'll always get a friendly nudge when a new story is ready to be shared. It's a small thing, but it helps these stories find the people who need them most. My choices, guided by Robert's wisdom and my own rediscovered strength, led me here, to this quiet haven, to this new, true freedom. It's a strange thing, this life. But I've learned that the greatest inheritance we can ever receive isn't measured in houses or cars or bank accounts. It isn't made of possessions, no matter how grand or valuable. It's made of choices.